Hey, so I'm charging my phone, so the cord is gonna be here. My phone was like 5% this, when I woke up. I left it kind of like saving the pictures and videos from, yesterday, and we recorded like a lot, and I think it's kind of like a turning point for us now. We're gonna be recording more because, as I mentioned, some medication I'm taking, or maybe it's just my head, and I haven't really been in the same mood that I usually have to just register everything. I'm registering like a lot of things. I'm like filming and recording, and I'm like taking pictures and recording, but there's still like a lot that I'm not doing, and it has to do with my head. So now with my parents also like in on the action, we're gonna have like many more registers, many more memoirs from this trip. And honestly, we are also like we're closer to the end than we are from the beginning. We're leaving this Saturday, and my dad, he arrives this Saturday, but my mom and I, we arrived the one before. So we're already over halfway through this trip. So we have tomorrow, Thursday, Friday, and some of Saturday, and then it's kind of the trip is over. It's been a really good time. I think I've been very I think the whole thing of like peace and relaxation, it has happened. I think I'm very healed. Although I was kind of like thinking about the overall meaning of my life, specifically, and not necessarily the meaning, but like when I was younger, I had this expectation that I would find kind of like the thing for me to do, and I had a dream this evening, last night, that I kind of like got me thinking about what are like some things that could have been, but then they weren't. And some of them have to do with me not pursuing them, but some of them it was because like I was kind of like barred from actually engaging with them. And I was thinking about one of them. Basically, when I was like younger, I grew up, in a very Christian context. So I kind of like I thought that I might want to become like a pastor. But the thing is that at the time, like the church that that we went to, which was a Presbyterian church, like women cannot really be pastors or having other the other positions that you have, like and that was kind of like the end of that. But for a little while, like I was very sure that that was kind of like the path that I should be taking, and that I was. Cantar, papai?
Aqui, a gente vai pra passear, não vai pra entrar na água não, né?
Não, eu tô sem roupa de
Então é só pra passear.
Anyway, so it is raining. It woke up raining. It's raining even more than yesterday. But we're gonna go to like a different place. It's called Trancoso, and it is in that direction. We went to that direction yesterday, and we got to see it was actually really worth it, because we were thinking about getting the car this morning and then having it for 24 hours, but we got it like yesterday afternoon, and it's not like a hotel where you check in and check out at the same time every day. So basically we took the car around like 4 p.m. and then we went to this place, Cabalia, which my mom and grandpa and I had already gone to, but we went there with my dad. We did a little walking around, and then we came back to Porto Seguro, which is the city that this town that we're in, like it is part of like that city. And there we went to the historical center, and it was evening, because usually you have a lot of like movement during the morning and the early afternoon, and then things start to kind of like calm down. So it was the evening. So actually it was not evening yet, it was late afternoon. I mean, it was kind of like the beginning. It was already dark, it's just that the sun sets kind of like early, so there's that. But yeah, so we went there and we found like a local man, I think he is he is I think he's homeless. I was not sure. He just mentioned that he lived in the area, but I think he didn't live in the area like in one of the houses. I think he lived on the streets. But he was very he was kind of like our tour guide, and then he took us to all like the different places in this historical center, and he gave us like a really good history lesson. Like, it was totally worth our time going there. We learned a lot, and we ended up going to a Lebanese place afterwards that they had nearby, and we ate what it would be like an actual esfihah back there, because the way that the esfihahs that we have here, they are unsurprisingly, they are like legit. They are kind of like in a mix of what they're having over there with like some of the stuff that we have here, because like our esfihahs here, they almost look like these mini pizzas. We have like the board or like the edges are just like pizza. So like it's a very thick dough, and you know the dough they use over there is like really thinner. But you know the man was saying that you know the generation before his, they were kind of like coming here, you know, they were kind of just worried with making money, so they made a lot of adaptations. And then for example this man, he's trying to bring like legit, you know, Arab food here, and yeah, so we ate a little something. It was good. Like we ate a lot yesterday. We also bought a lot. We went to this I don't know if you call it like a department store. It is kind of like a gigantic convenience store. But you know, you also have, you know, I bought some flip-flops. They're right there. Those ones that look a little bit more, you know, decent, because the ones that I had, the gladiator heels that I had, they're not heels. They're just, you know, the sandals. They're split in half, you know, the right foot. So I can't wear them anymore. I have to throw them away when we get home. Which is really sad because like I've had this since, you know, 2021. But yeah, they served me, you know, good. You know, they were used for 4 years, and yeah, so like now I have like that one. So you know they also sell like flip-flops and clothes, and you know clothes stuff for, you know, like beds and, you know, towels and a little bit of everything, a lot of food, you know, but like usually stuff that not anything fresh, you know, industrialized food. So there are two of this. You have like the regular one, which is much bigger, and you have the express one, which is, you know, the smaller one. And they used to exist where they used to be Blockbusters. You know, this company, they bought Blockbusters, and like slowly they started to, you know, do without the DVDs. But yeah, I don't know if this was, you know, actually a Blockbuster before, or it was just like a spot that had always been that. But we went there and we got some cookies. Then they were on sale, and I got the Pringles. You know, they're like taste like Portuguese pizza, and I've been wanting to kind of like have them for the longest time back, you know, back at home. But they were kind of like expensive. I couldn't find, you know, and here they were, I mean, it's not that they were like cheap, but they were cheaper than, you know, it was in other places. So I picked some, you know, and my dad and I, we were, you know, eating them. And, you know, I only consumed like half the can. So we're taking it with us today. And we're taking a lot of snacks, you know, so we don't have to buy anything on the streets. I mean, yesterday we did actually buy, we bought some food, as I said, in the Lebanese place. And then later, which was something that we kind of like, we were going to do, we went to get an acarajé, which is, you know, this local dish that my mom really likes. And, you know, here it is cheaper than it is back home. And I mean, not by much, but, you know, it is cheaper. So we found a place, and we had an acarajé. And then I found, you know, like across the street, a place selling candy, you know, Fini candy. And they had like were like 40% off, you know, this one section. So I got a lot of like the candy there, which I had never really taken before. Because, you know, when I go to this place, I don't really go to take the stuff that I already tried. I take the ones that, you know, they're like specific, you know, from here basically. I mean, at least I had never seen them, you know, back at, you know, my city. So it was, you know, it was good. And you know, ended up being like almost like half the price. So really happy with like that development. But yeah, so we went there and then went to historical center. We walked, you know, downtown a little bit. So it was really good, you know, as far as like, you know, a tourism, you know, trip, you know, like being a tourist. We saw things, we enjoyed ourselves. So we're all very happy with like how things turned out. And we're gonna leave by, you know, 10 a.m. Now it's probably like 9:30, and basically, you know, it's going to probably still be raining, but we're gonna go. The only issue is that, you know, like part of like the road that we're gonna take when we're coming back, it is not, you know, like asphalt or, you know, pebble. It's not rock. It's not anything. It's just like dirt. So that could be a problem. But we did rent, you know, a car that is a little bit taller, you know, a little bit higher than, you know, some other ones, so we can actually, you know, actually move about, you know, for a little bit more of ease. But yeah, so I was thinking about this whole situation. I think I'm gonna talk to my parents about this because I'm changing topics, by the way. Let's talk about the whole pastor thing, because for a little while there, I was very sure that is the thing I wanted to do. I know you know, for a fact that like probably it would not have been the thing for me, particularly because I'm not religious anymore, so it wouldn't have worked out in the end. But you know, it was something that was kind of like cut short because of not because of, you know, myself giving up or, you know, no longer having an interest, but because they pretty much told me like, okay, you can't do this. And I think like these are the worst ones, because at the end of the day, like that is just another thing that that didn't work out for me. There are many of those, you know, happening all over. But like it's different when, you know, for you to just choose not to do something, and for, you know, something should be kind of like forbidden for you. it feels different. And as I said, like I'm not thinking that like that was my calling, that I should have gone that path, but it is something that for like a little while it was kind of like the thing for me. And and things have changed since. But I actually do wonder, like, would that have gotten me to be kind of like more attached to my faith? Because I feel like that was my source of livelihood. Would that have gotten me to just, stay there, stay put, where I could, because sometimes, like, I have to study, I have to go to college for 4 years, and there's like a lot of like time invested, and it's not like a public school, it's like it's private, so you have to. But I do know that I think the church pays for, like the college expenses for the people going to that, they call it a seminar, going to the seminar, and they kind of like to learn how to be, not only how to be a pastor, but like they're learning like all the, I guess, the theory and the practical applications of things. But yeah, let me just move on from this. So yesterday we were out, so I didn't really have the opportunity to work too much on my novel. But when I did have, I did make some progress. Like I started, I was mentioning, this new character that I was, working on, and I basically found, a spot for her chapter, and it's kind of like the prologue. I think it works out really well. Because I think the information I'm trying to convey on this chapter, like it actually works out better before we have context from like later in the book. So this was kind of like the chapter. I'm going to maybe have like another one on part 2, because right now the book has 3 different parts, and then prologue is before part 1. I don't know, having like one chapter dedicated to this person, but I still have to figure out like what exactly like her action plan is going to be, how she's going to approach things, and how that is going to connect with like the rest of the people, because I'm seeing some possible connections between some characters, but I have to kind of like start writing down properly like what it is, because sometimes like you make a plan and it doesn't work out the way that you thought it would, but it does work out in the end. Things, they end up connecting, and they end up kind of like acquiring meaning as you kind of like work it out. So basically that's kind of like what I have in my hands here. So also like there, I start, because sometimes when I'm writing, like it's kind of like ideas, they come in. So I have an idea, for example, like, okay, this character shows up, but sometimes it's not going to be like that specific character. It's going to be like a character that I still don't know who it is. And as you start kind of like writing, then you start kind of like developing a personality, and then you figure out like, okay, it's going to be this person. Sometimes it can be someone someone new. Sometimes it can be somebody who we don't really know a whole lot of. I think like usually like that is like the best case scenario, because somebody who has like little characterization, so you're giving the opportunity to characterize like that individual in your story, and then it kind of becomes more relevant, because something that sometimes I do when it comes to the past novels, because you start some threads, and like the bigger ones like you totally remember, so you're kind of like carrying on. But there are some smaller ones, so sometimes it's like a character that you mention, or like a certain event that has occurred, or like a place, and like I don't, some places like they're not supposed to be super fleshed out, at least not yet. So you kind of have this, you give it like a little characterization, but usually, like, for example, if there's somewhere that you mentioned, like for example, I'm the 3rd novel. In the 3 novels, it doesn't have to be like a whole lot of like, it doesn't have to be anything too significant. It can be just I don't know, just like a little mention, just that, like, okay, this place that exists. I think it helps with like your world building, because it makes it, the story feel like more real. Makes you feel like, okay, this is an actual place that exists. Because I think like the key of, when you're thinking about dialogue, is kind of like writing how you would write. Although I will say I spend a whole lot of time with myself, and not necessarily enough time with like other people. So sometimes like the dialogue that I have is very stilted. The way I interact with people is very kind of like, it's not really ideal. So I shouldn't really base on myself and on my experiences. Not always. But like there's so many ways at this day, at this day and age, for you to kind of like gather like regular, normal dialogue. There's just so much content out there that's just like, for example, people talking, interacting, and like that is very useful. That is very helpful for you, in figuring out like how to make things, sound, real and not, contrived. But yeah, enough about like my novel. I'm going to work on it a little bit before between like me finishing this video and we living. But it's not the point right now. What I want to talk about is my head. So the fantasies, like the old ones that I'm trying to do without, they're still like here and they're still present. But I will say they have less of a hold in general. Most of the time, let's say like 80% of the time, they're just like these silly little things that are happening in my head that I am like trying to figure out how to work with, and trying to push them away. But like this, it's somewhat easy to push them away because I'm not really attached to them too much. They're just like something happening in my head, to pass the time. But then there's like that 20% of the 20% of the time where it does actually it does hurt me. That's I guess the best way to put it, because I'm very much invested in them and I want that to be my reality, and then because of that my actual reality seems like shit, and that's not great. And I've kind of like come to accept that like you don't have to be in love with your life every moment of the day, every single day. It's okay for you to just look at it and be disappointed and frustrated every once in a while. I think it can be even good because then it makes you kind of like put things into perspective, so you can kind of like maybe work on so you can work things out. You can maybe to actually make it like improvements in your life. So there is like that aspect, and I'm kind of like welcoming some of it. But the problem is that sometimes like it crosses a line, and then I start like really despising my life and not really wanting to be here anymore, like under these circumstances. So like that's a problem. But as I said, it's happening only like I would say that like the really bad. It only happens really bad like 10% of the time. Like 20% of the time is happening in a bad way, but like only 5 to 10 is like really bad. But yeah, but anyways, the fantasies are bad, but at the same time, like they have these other fantasies that they're a little bit more tangentially related to like what is happening right now. Actually, they're not really related sometimes to like, what is happening. I mean, they started out like that way, but what happens is that like we kind of lost the plot halfway through it. But it is fantasies that exist in my life as it currently is. It's not really trying to change the past or the present or the future. It's just like in the same trajectory of right now, and it kind of like embraces what has already happened and what is happening, instead of kind of like creating this whole new excited existence in my head. So that is also happening, and I'm okay with that. But also something that has been happening increasingly more is just silence, which is kind of like the ideal, I think, shape and form for things to happen in my head, which is like not really like without the weight of anything, because these fantasies, regardless of whether like they're good or not, or they are like helpful or not, or they're like productive or not, like they're still like kind of like noise. They're still noise. So I need to kind of have silence so I can be at ease and at peace. And it's happening increasingly more, just like me observing things. So sometimes, for example, yesterday we were in the car a whole lot. I was in the car a whole lot, and I was looking at things, and I wasn't really thinking of anything other than and then nothing. I wasn't thinking about anything. I was just like enjoying the day. And sometimes like you have some noise happening, but most of the time there is none. So anyways, I'm gonna wrap this up right now. Bye.